Hi everyone, good morning. Thank you for joining us for today's session. Today we would be talking about integrating storage account with Event Hub. And for this we have with us Naveen Verma, who's a senior DevOps engineer. And I won't take much of your time and hand over the virtual stage to Naveen now.
Thanks a lot, Anamika. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining in. So, today we'll be discussing about the integration of storage accounts. So, it is one of the use cases that we encountered in one of my projects. And today, as you know, we are more and more going forward towards event based architectures, event based applications, event driven systems. So we do want our system to be responsive enough. So whenever anything happens, any event occurs, we should be not notified right at the moment. So in the same fashion, we have something with our storage accounts. As we all know, storage accounts are one of the services provided by Azure, which helps us store our unstructured data. We can have our blobs, audio, video files. So a lot of objects going into storage accounts, and the storage accounts are one of the highly utilized services these days. So in order to get what is going on in my storage account, we can have the automated event-based mechanism in place, and that is what Azure provides us with. So in storage accounts, we have the functionality where we can set the triggers based on certain events, and whenever those event happens, the notification or a particular action will be triggered, and these actions can be controlled via multiple methods. We can have our function apps, we can have our logic apps. So there is a good amount of services which we can use to integrate those events too. So there would be an event, there would be a trigger, and then there would be a handler for that event. So this is the very same architecture which we'll be discussing today, where the event would be generated in our storage account. And in order to handle it, we will be having one Azure function created. So it will be a standard simple Azure function which I'll be creating, and I'll be showing it to you. So we'll be walking through the entire demo. And in order to integrate our storage account and that event handler function, we will be using event grids here. So what event grids will do is event grids help us facilitate this event driven architecture for our applications. So it provides a lot of out of the box functionalities, a lot of out of the box events which we can utilize in order to trigger certain components and certain actions onto our system. So today in this demo, we will be walking through the storage account and function app and how we can integrate these two services. So I'll just start sharing my screen so that we can quickly move on to the demo. All right, so we're all set. So now in order to get these things in place, what we will be doing is we will be creating the storage accounts. And so before we directly move on to the demo, I would like to quickly walk you through the architecture of how this event driven architecture actually works. All right. So now to move ahead, so what all we'll be having is, first of all, let's get the components in place. So first of all, we'll be having our storage accounts, and let me see if we can get functions. Yes, we have. There we go. So the component where we'll be ingesting any data or we'll be ingesting our inputs would be our storage account. So in the storage account, we will be having all our data. We'll be uploading some components, and in the storage account, we have the facility to incorporate the events. We can integrate our storage account with certain events. So So when we talk about the integration of events with our storage account, we get different type of events which we can integrate with our storage account, and that includes creation of a blob, and we also have deletion of a blob. So how these events work is, as their name is clearly suggesting, whenever there is a new blob created, whenever there is a new blob uploaded in my storage account, we can have an event triggered in turn. And that event further can trigger any other function or any other service. We can have a function app, logic app, so on and so forth. In this demo, today's workshop will be utilizing function apps as our event handler. And in the same fashion, we can have the events triggered for deletion of any blob. For instance, let's say we are going through our storage accounts, we have a lot of data there, and we want to keep a track whenever anything is deleted, because manually keeping a track of what is being deleted becomes an overhead going forward. So what we can do is we can have that event triggers in place which can notify us as soon as any blob is deleted. So in our case, what we were majorly having the requirement to get notified when a new blob is uploaded to our storage account. So we were taking regular backups, and those backups were being uploaded to our storage accounts. Now we had to manually go in there and check when the blob is uploaded or not. So that was one overhead which we were incorporating. So in order to avoid that, we came up with the solution where we integrated our storage account with the help of event grids, and we utilized the function Azure Function app in order to trigger the notification mechanism for us. So in the same fashion, we can integrate it with our event grids. And these in turn will trigger the next Azure service that will be our function app in this specific scenario. And this is our function app. So this is how the mechanism actually works. So as soon as there is any upload, so as soon as a blob is uploaded, The blob is uploaded to the storage account. Then we get the events triggered. So whenever we are uploading any blob to our storage account, the corresponding event is triggered, and that event is being further transferred via the event grid, which helps us get that event to our function app, which in turn executes the function which we have deployed in our function app, and it does the required operations whatsoever we require. That operation is executed. So this is the event driven architecture which we have incorporated, or which we'll be discussing today. So now let's move ahead and get these things in place to see how it actually works. So let me go back to the portal. There it is. All right. So first of all, we'll be creating a new resource group. All right, and the second thing that we'll be creating is the storage account. So for the demo, we'll keep everything to the bare minimum. There are no explicit requirements to be done while creating the storage account. The storage account creation would be a standard storage account creation. The actual components begin once we are done with our storage account creation. All right, our storage account is up and running. So now, as you can see in the storage account, we have something called as events. Now this is the actual part where we want to do all the configurations. We will be doing all our configurations in this event section. But before we move on to the events section and start integrating the event, we need to have our event handler in place. In this scenario, we have function apps as our event handler. So if we are not having the event handler function, we won't be able to create the final endpoint. So let me just quickly show you. So first of all, what we have to do is we have to create the event subscription first. So we just name the event subscription. And the schema would be event grid schema. Out of all the three schemas, event grid schema 1.0 input schema, we'll be having event grid schema. Topic type would be storage account. This is something which it is already picked by default because we have created it directly from the storage account. If we are creating it explicitly, then we have to mention the topic type would be a storage account. So the better option would be you go directly to your storage account. You directly go to your storage account in the events, and from the events you directly start the event subscription creation from here. So that will help you automatically select the topic, event topic. This source resource would be our storage account. That is the name of our storage account. Then we have to provide a topic name, a topic which will be created. So we'll be creating it by the same name. And then you see we have the event types. Now these are the different types of events which we were discussing just a moment back. So if I show you the entire list, you see we have a lot of components which we can incorporate. By default, we have blob creation and blob deletion. We can also get it for directory creation, directory deletion, blob renaming, directory renaming. So what happens is whenever a blob is created, we can trigger the event. Whenever a blob is deleted, we can create the event. Whenever we create a new directory, that means whenever we are creating a new container in our storage account, then we can get notified. Whenever we are deleting those directories or containers, we can get notified. Whenever we are renaming any blob, whenever we are renaming a container, whenever we are changing the tier of our blobs, for instance we are moving it from hot to cool or from cold to hot or archive, so whenever there is a tier change, we'll get notified. If there are any inventory completion operation, any async operations, or any life cycle policy that is done. So these are all the multiple storage account events which we can handle from this event integration. So this event grid helps us track all these events. So for this demo, we will be having blob creation and blob deletion. And now we have the endpoint details. Now in the endpoint detail, we specify what type of event handler we would like to have. So here, if you see, we have different components. We have Azure Functions, we have webhooks, we have event hubs, we have storage queues, we have hybrid connection, service bus, partner destinations. So we have a lot of components with which we can integrate this endpoint. And for our demo, we are going with Azure Functions. We'll be integrating it with Azure Functions. And there, once we select the endpoint type, that will be a function app, we have to select the specific function. So we go to the resource groups, we go to the function app, and then we select the function. Right now, as we are not having any function app created, that's why we don't have anything in the top down. So that's why in order to create this integration, in order to create this event, we need to have our function app in place so that we can set it as an endpoint here. So let's move ahead and create our function app as well. So we'll go to function app. We'll create a new function app. So the primary advantage that function app would be giving us is the serverless execution of our direct code. So we can have our exact code in place and we can directly get that code triggered. So that is the primary advantage which our function apps is giving us, the serverless architecture. So here the runtime stack would be Python. So you can choose any language, any programming language which you're comfortable with, or where you have your script or your code. You can just go ahead, select that, and you proceed with it. So I have Python. So we'll go ahead with Python. Operating system would be Linux, and plan type will be consumption based. Rest everything will keep as it is. So monitoring is something that you have to enable, and the reason why it is essential is when you are triggering the events, when you have the event integrations in place, when you have your storage account set, you have your event integrations in place. So there you'll be getting the insights from the storage account perspective, but you want to get that visibility from your function app perspective as well. And unless or until you enable monitoring there, you won't be able to see what is going on in your function, whether your function was triggered or not. What was the status of your function? Was it a success? Was it a failure? What was the error? So it is pretty essential in these scenarios that you enable the monitoring for your function app. And that's the reason we are enabling the app insights for our function app. And then we'll simply just review and create this function app. All right. Okay, it's in progress. All right, we're almost done with the storage account for the function apps. So as soon as this function app is created, we will be able to get the endpoint listed here automatically. And okay, we're done. So now we'll go to the resource. Now this is our function app. Now this resource that we have created is the function app. It is not the exact function. We have not yet deployed, or we have not yet created the actual function. The actual function will be our piece of code, our script that we want to be executed whenever the event is triggered. So that is something which we have to create. Now there are two components to it. First is, if you are on a Windows machine, if you are executing on a Windows machine, you can directly create a function from the UI also. But if you are using Mac or Linux, then you have to integrate the function app extension with your VS Code, and from there you integrate it with your Azure account and deploy the Azure function directly from your VS Code. So that functionality is not supported for Mac and Linux. So right now, as I'm on Windows, so we'll directly create the function from here. So we can directly create it from the UI. You can directly create it from your VS Code as well. If you are going through the VS Code route, what you have to do is you need to have the Azure plugin in your VS Code as well as function app plugin in your VS Code. So the function app plugin will help you deploy the function app to Azure, and the Azure plugin will help your VS Code log into your Azure subscriptions. So those are the prerequisites when you are working with VS Code. So there you will require to gather all those components, and then you will be deploying your function app from the VS Code. Now what you have to do is you have to select the template. Now in this scenario, the template that we have to trigger uses event triggers, event grid triggers. So this event grid trigger is something that will be created. So based on this template, it will create a function for us. So you have to remember the template has to be event grid triggers, because if we do not select the event grid triggers, then this event grid trigger will not be able to fetch that function. So it is one event grid trigger. That's why it requires the event grid function to be created. So the template has to be event grid template. Then that's when we'll be able to get it as the endpointer. So now as you can see, we have our function app, the actual function created, and if you go in code and test, you'll be able to see it has deployed a sample code. So this is a sample code. You can very well modify this code. Let's say if you want to put in your custom code, you have some custom code which you want to create. For instance, I created the code for notification to Slack. So for that, we have our Python script created to send the notification to a particular Slack channel. That is something which we can do from the VS Code, and that is across the board, be it Windows, Linux, or Mac. Any code level modification which involves importing any external libraries, that is something which we have to do from VS Code or our machine, and then redeploy our code, redeploy our function to the portal. So right now we will not be doing any custom changes. So if you have to do any custom changes, you want to use any custom libraries, you want to execute any custom function, that is something which you will be doing from your VS Code or from your machine, and then you will be deploying your function to the function app. So this is a function which it has created. It is a simple Python code which tells us about the event ID, what data that event is handling, what is the topic, what is the subject, and what is the type of event. So these all details it will be able to fetch from the event grid subscription that we have created. We are having a topic type, we are having the type of events. So this configuration will help our actual function fetch all those details and get us all the details, what happened, when happened, and how it happened. So this is our function which we have, and this is now what we will be integrating with our storage account. So now if we go and select the endpoint, see, now it is automatically able to pick all the details. It has automatically picked up the function app which we created. It automatically picked up the slot. It automatically picked up the actual function which we created. So now this trigger knows which function to pick. And if we create a new function and that is not an event trigger template based function, it will not be able to pick that up. So we can look at that part as well. So let's say if I create a new function, and now in the template, let's say I select the HTTP trigger. So this is the type of function I'm creating, and we'll create this new function. All right, now we have our second function also created. This is an event, this is an HTTP trigger based function. So if I refresh it, I should have two functions. See, so for the first function we have the trigger as event grid, and for the second function we have the trigger as HTTP. So now see, even if I'm dropping it down, I'm getting the list. I'm just able to see the event grid trigger based function. I'm not able to see the HTTP trigger based function. So you have to remember this point whenever we are integrating the storage account using the event grids to our function app. The function has to be of the type event grid trigger. Otherwise, it will not be able to. The event integration will not be able to pick that up. So the event subscription that we create, that event subscription require our function to be of the type event grid trigger. Otherwise, we will not be able to integrate it. So now we have our function also in place, and then we will just confirm it. And now we will move on to the creation part. So now once this integration is done, what it will do is it will integrate our storage account with the function app with the help of event grids. So with those this event subscription, we are able to do the integration. Now our event subscription and storage account integration is completed, with the help of which we are able to trigger a final function app. So now see, the event subscription and storage accounts are now integrated. As now you can see, we have the entire graph in place, and this graph will give us the detail of what all events are being triggered, any failed events when the event is triggered. So all these details you will be getting with this graph. So whenever a new blob is created, whenever a blob is deleted, we will be getting the updates from this graph. And anytime that event happens, whenever a blob is created or updated, the event would be triggered with the help of this event subscription integration that we have done with our storage account, and it will in turn trigger the function app. So now let me just show you from the function app also how it is integrated. So it will show a flowchart for how this function app is being integrated. All right, so now you can see we have the trigger, and that is the event grid trigger. Then we have our function, and then it will provide the output to us. So this is the flow of our function. So this function will be triggered whenever there is a trigger or we manually put in an input. So right now we have created the automated system. So whenever the event is triggered, that event will in turn trigger this function, and this function will set up the output for us. It will provide us with the respective output. So now Let me just open the terminal. So now it is connected to the log analytics also. So the advantage of connecting it to log analytics is we can get the monitoring insights as well as we can get the log. So whenever the event is created, any event is triggered, we'll be able to see what is going on in our function app. So what we will do is now we will create a new container, and in that container we will upload a sample blob. All right. So I've selected an image and I'll be uploading that image to my storage account. All right, the image upload is done, as you can see. See, as soon as we uploaded the image, the function app was triggered. So let me just maximize it for better visibility. So as you can see here, we have the event triggered, we have the event grid trigger processed. This is the ID, this is the data, and as we can see, we uploaded a blob. So the API is put blob. That is what exactly happened. And we have the URL where our blob was uploaded. So it was uploaded to the storage account in this container, and this is the actual blob. So see, we have the blob type, the event type, as well as blob is created. We created a new blob. So now you see, as soon as we created the blob, we got the event triggered, and that event integration in turn triggered the function app, and this function was executed. So in the same fashion, we can have any level of custom code deployed to our function app, and this function app can in turn trigger that function. So let me just show you one of the code which I was having. So this is a code base which I created for Slack notification. So what it will do is it will trigger a Slack notification on a particular Slack channel. However, this code requires the requests library to be imported. And in order to do that, we need to execute the function from our machine, and then we have to deploy it to the function apps. Then we will able to get this updated. So I'll share this snippet with you all so that you guys can also play around with that. You can also trigger the Slack notification. So in order to integrate to Slack, the only thing that you have to do is, in this code base, you just have to get the webhook URL for any particular channel, be it a private channel or a public channel. The only thing that you have to do is create a webhook and use that webhook URL, the incoming webhook URL, in the URL field, and that will do the trick. So once you have the URL set, once you have the libraries resolved, then as soon as you trigger the event from your storage account, the event subscription integration will trigger the function app, and you will get the notification in Slack. So whenever there is a new blob created, we will get notified in Slack also. So this is how we can do custom integrations also. So this is exactly how we can do the integration for our event subscriptions with our storage account, and use the power of function apps to get or process the data further. We can get the details of what happened, we can send custom notifications. So in this fashion, we achieve our end goal. And this is the use case which we automated using event triggers and the event subscription and storage account integrations. And let me show you the storage account as well. We had a graph there also. See, in this graph we are able to see there was one delivered event and one matched event and one published event. So one matched event means we had the event category set to creation of a blob and deletion of a blob. The action we did was creation of a blob and it matched the event that we had created. Then this event was published and was delivered to our function app. So from this graph, we can see the event was successfully triggered from the storage account. From the logs, we can see the triggered event successfully got the function to be executed. Our function app was executed just as expected, and we got the desired results. And in the monitoring section, we can also see the calls to our function and what was the status of that function call. See, we had one function call and the result was a success. So with this monitoring and logging section, we can get the details from storage account and from function app. And as you can see, we have the entire output as well. So in this way, we can get our entire event-based system in place. Now we don't have to do anything. Anytime a new blob is created or anytime a blob is deleted, our function would be triggered. We'll get notified. We'll get that information in the logs, and we will be able to keep a track of what is going on and how it is going on. So we will have that visibility of what all components are going inside a storage account and what all components are being removed from our storage account. So this pretty much sums up today's demo on the integration of storage account and even subscriptions, even grids. So I hope this was helpful to you guys and you guys got to learn something new from this integration. This event based integration helps us achieve a lot of cool stuff. You know, we can do a lot with these event based architectures and event based systems. So just with the trigger of an event, we can do multiple components. We don't have to statically wait for anything to happen. It is completely purely event driven. We are not manually triggering anything. We're not doing any stuff. So whether it is a manual upload, whether it is an automated upload, as soon as it's done, we will get the notifications, we'll get our system up and running. So all the events are covered in this scenario, and it really helps keep a better track of our system and helps us optimize our system in a better way. So I hope you guys enjoyed the session and you got to learn something new. I'll be sharing the code base with you guys for the Python script that I have. And that pretty much sums it up, guys. Thank you so much for joining in and happy learning. Bye bye.